Here we go.
I went live on my YouTube channel right after Bucks at Cowboys. And I'll be the first to admit to you, I actually forgot to do something in the form of a tweet that I always do after the Cowboys win. So to take care of that, I'm going to start off this show with that. How about them Cowboys? Sorry, I just forgot it. Forgot to tweet it. And yet maybe it was a Freudian slip because my emotions were so mixed after that game. I do love me some Baker Mayfield. I hated it for Tampa. I've got some friends in the organization, one of whom tweeted me immediately, "Merry Christmas. Here's your gifts." Yeah, we stole it. We took it literally right out of their hands at the end of the game. Jordan Lewis twice. What a playmaker he is. And yet, for all the great things that I did see, all the hope that I did see flashing before my very eyes on television that could predict a much better Cowboy season next season, my emotions are mixed because it's clear that Mike McCarthy's job has been saved. And it's now clear, as I'll get to in just a moment, that Jerry Jones is going to make Micah Parsons the highest paid player on defense in the history of the National Football League. That's just what Jerry does. I'll explain in just a moment. But the two big themes of the night were, A, as you heard on NBC, and I love Chris Collinsworth and I love Mike Tirico, worked with him many years back at ESPN. But their big themes of the night that play so strongly in the psyche of Cowboy Nation are, number one, or were, how hard the Cowboys are playing for good old Mike McCarthy. And I'm like, where was it earlier in the year? I'm going to say it again. We went through 6 straight home games, starting with that debacle, that nightmare of a playoff game against Green Bay, down 27-0 before halftime. And then the first 5 home games this year that were all-time nightmares. No team in NFL history has been that overmatched at home in 6 straight home games than we were. Mike McCarthy was the head coach. How does he get away with that? How do we forget that? It's like it didn't happen. Actually, what's happening lately, we've won 4 out of 5 to get to 7 and 8, is an indictment of everybody who was involved in those 6 straight games at home, starting with the head coach, who's not a head coach. He's a very good offensive coordinator, but shouldn't be the CEO, the commanding officer of the Dallas freaking Cowboys, America's team. We're better than this. You know it, and I know it. So I don't want to be a bearer of bad tidings here in the holiday season. I just want to be your voice of reason. I'm lifelong diehard. I started when I was 10 years of age at my first Cowboy game, the old Cotton Bowl against the then St. Louis Cardinals. That's how far back I go. So you can't match me in length of dedication. I love this team with all my heart and soul, but I like to say, maybe it's an oxymoron, but I'm an objective Cowboy fan. I tell you exactly what I see and what I don't see. And I go crazy when they win, and I go crazier when they lose. It's like I take it very personally. Crushes my soul when they lose. And when I see trends that are leading to disaster and repeat disaster, I'm the first to stand up and bang the table and say it. And my emotions were torn apart last night. I was excited. I love that. We stole one from the Bucks, who were leading the South and are no longer leading the South thanks to us. We did that. How about them? But we're losing draft pick places in the draft, obviously. We're falling the wrong way. So we get to 7 and 8. To what end? Did we lose Ashton Genty? Will he be off the board now by the time we draft? Maybe. And after so many prominent voices in the national media have campaigned for Mike McCarthy to be back, he's going to be back. And I'm just dumbfounded by it. It is wrong. I campaigned for Jim Harbaugh. No way Jerry's going to do that. Jim Harbaugh would have changed the culture. I campaigned for Deion Sanders. Deion was born to be the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, and now he is committed heart and soul to staying in Boulder and building a national champ at Colorado. And I believe he'll do it in the next 3 years. Way to go. God bless you, Neon Deion, Coach Prime. The point is, now Dak is campaigning for Mike McCarthy to be back, and now Micah is campaigning for Mike McCarthy to be back because they love how easy he is on them. Right now, he's the director of the country club known as the Dallas Cowboys. Nobody gets held accountable. There's no fear factor. Nobody fears losing their job. Nobody fears the film sessions from good old Mike Mack. Are you kidding me? The worst motivator in the history of motivation. There's no whip cracking. There's no ass chewing. Everybody is happy playing for old Mike McCarthy because if you get blown off the field by Green Bay in a playoff game and New Orleans in the first home game this year, and then Baltimore, and then Detroit, and then Philadelphia, and then Houston, if you get blown off the field, nobody gets held accountable. There's no more Jimmy Johnson here. I was there when Jimmy took over. That team lived in fear of Jimmy Johnson. And I'm talking about Michael Irvin lived in fear of Jimmy's wrath. Nobody fears Mike McCarthy. So they're playing hard so that he'll stay and take it easy on them. That's why they're playing hard, because he's been so good to them. He's a nice guy, old Mike McCarthy. So all of a sudden, it looks like we're going to run it back with Dak, even though I continue to tell you, if you look closely at what's happening, the offense is more efficient and effective with Cooper Rush running it. He was sensational in the first half against the Bucs. Sensational. Threw for his career high 260 yards in the first half. He was pretty good in the third quarter. He threw some sweet balls, just effortless. He can throw it as effortlessly as Brandon Aubrey can kick it. I just love the way he operates, and he's low turnover. He's now 11 touchdowns to 2 interceptions, only 2 this year. It's Cooper Rush. They function better. They didn't even have a run game. 31 yards rushing, and they function better, cleaner, purer with Cooper Rush at the controls. They trust him more. CD trusts him more. CD doesn't like Dak Prescott, and I don't blame him. Dak can be at his worst when he's needed the most. And Cooper Rush just keeps making little big plays. And yet, we're going to run it back with Dak, and we're going to run it back with Mike Mack. And now, I get to my theme here. We're going to run it back with Micah Parsons. You know me, we made a music video about Micah's first couple of years because he was a game wrecker. 11 from heaven, my oh Micah. And I overreacted. I'll be the first to admit it. My cowboy blood began to percolate and took me over. And I leaped to a conclusion that Micah already belonged, at least in the same sentence, with Lawrence Taylor, and he does not, and it appears he never will. I was wrong about Micah Parsons. I'll be the first to admit it. He has explosive ability, but he's not big and strong enough to dominate, even the way Charles Haley did back through the 90s. He was the missing link in those Super Bowl teams, and that was a Jerry Jones special. Jerry went and got Charles Haley from San Francisco, our arch rival within the NFC, because Charles had become more trouble than he was worth for the 49ers, and they said, yeah, we'll give him to you, and they did. They basically gave him away to Dallas and gave us 3 Super Bowls that should have been 5 Super Bowls straight, if not Jimmy and Jerry falling apart. Charles Haley was the ultimate difference maker. You could double team him, and he would rip through double teams. You could chip block him, and he would laugh at you. You could single block him with an all-pro left tackle, and he would bull rush him and knock him on his behind. Charles Haley, he was a whole nother level from what Micah can do. Micah's just not big and strong enough. He's fast enough. He's quick enough. But I keep hearing the theme every game from every national TV commentator. The key here is you can't let Micah wreck the game. Well, even Sunday night against the Bucs, did he wreck the game? He had 1 sack, and I can't even remember it, which was his only quarterback hit. He did have 5 tackles, which is above his average. But I remind you, going back to that Green Bay game, he had his worst stats of his career because they were just zeros across the board in that game against Green Bay. Big game player? I don't know. I haven't seen that. He wrecked games early on because nobody knew how to deal with him. He's just a speed rusher. That's it. But if you get a piece of him early at the line of scrimmage, if you don't whiff on him, he has a hard time. And if you hit him hard enough early, he starts to run out of gas. We saw against the Bucs late in the game, he was just running out of gas. He's not strong enough to overpower without expending all of his energy and being gassed for a few plays. Would I trade Micah? It would depend what I could get back. But if I could get King's ransom for him, I would think about it very strongly. Trade him to Philadelphia. I just think they're going to go win the Super Bowl, so they're not going to need him. They sure don't need him right now because they got the best defense in pro football. I'll get to that in just a moment. But let's start with the bigger picture about Micah. Let's talk about Micah and his money. Will Jerry Jones make Micah Parsons the highest paid defensive player ever? And I start with this. Micah did make news last week by saying, number one, he does not want to hold out. Thank you for that. Number two, Micah said he'd take a little less than top dollar if it meant having better talent around him on that Cowboy defense. I love Micah saying that, even if his agent and the players union did not. His agent will not take less than top dollar. But here's the point. When it comes to negotiating with Jerry, Micah Parsons has no idea what he's about to get into and go through. You know, Micah can still be a little kid-like, a little naive, a little goofy, a little too much into himself and his superstardom to see the bigger picture. So, Micah, allow me to explain to you exactly what will happen as you pursue your new long-term contract. What's going to happen is the same thing that happened to Emmitt Smith and to Ezekiel Elliott and to Dak Prescott twice and now to CeeDee Lamb. Jerry Jones has the biggest and most unchecked ego in the National Football League, bigger than any other owner's or player's ego. Biggest ego in NFL history belongs to Gerald Wayne Jones Jr. So, Jerry will begin this negotiation by making an insultingly lowball offer that will anger Micah and especially his agent and force Micah to hold out and miss all the offseason program and all of training camp. You know why? Because this way, Jerry can be the center of media attention for, 4 or 5 months. Jerry will be constantly asked about Micah. Will this get done, Jerry? Jerry, would you consider trading Micah? Jerry, will Micah missing camp hurt this team? Jerry will be in all his glory for the next 4 or 5 months. Jerry loves stars holding out. Protracted holdouts make Jerry an even bigger star than he is. Holdouts allow Jerry to go to dinner with his family and with friends and privately boast about teaching old Micah a lesson here, putting him in his place. This is Jerry's way of still, quote unquote, competing at football. Remember, he did start at offensive guard for a national championship team at Arkansas. He did do that. But this way, at age 82, Jerry can still go one-on-one with one of his stars in a negotiation. Who's the stronger and the tougher man? Who blinks first? Jerry loves this. But we all know how these things always end with Jerry and Star, with the star winning. So once the Cowboys break camp, once they return to Dallas this next summer, watch what happens. Jerry always caves. He always gives the star the biggest contract ever at his position. Why? Because Jerry also loves his image of being Daddy Warbucks with the deepest pockets, like a father to all of his stars, the owner of the world's most valuable team, paying his superstars the most money. Paying top dollar is good for the metallic blue brand. Jerry Jones almost always overpays his stars, except for CD, who deserve more than Justin Jefferson. CD's balling. He's got a banged up shoulder and it just doesn't, he just toughs through it. He's got his money, but he just keeps playing harder and harder. That's who he is. He's the best receiver in football. But Jerry did force CD to miss camp. Micah isn't nearly as dominant at his position as CD is at his. Micah can be pretty easily, as I mentioned, and consistently neutralized. Just not big enough and strong enough to bulldoze left or right tackles the way Charles Haley did. To me, Micah has been overhyped and overrated, and I participated. I'm guilty as charged. I haven't seen him wreck a game for now a couple of years. Worst stats in that Green Bay playoff loss. I don't know. I'm just not sure about highest paid defense. Every year we go into, will he be the defensive player of the year? And he's the odds-on favorite year after year and never gets close to winning it. Won't get close this year. Obviously, he missed 4 games. But the point is, Micah was on the field for the Green Bay game and that New Orleans game to start the year and that Baltimore game. He was on the field for those games, and look what happened. But in the end, you know and I know how this thing's going to end between Micah and Jerry. By September 1st, Micah Parsons, whether I like it or not, having missed all of training camp, will become the highest paid defensive player ever. So I want to say an early congrats to number 11. You belong to Jerry Jones Country Club, managed by the Mike McCarthy you want back. Way to go, Micah. Okay. Whatever tiny chance my Dallas Cowboys had of making the playoffs was ended yesterday or Sunday in Washington by the most extraordinary rookie quarterback I have ever watched, Jayden Daniels. Jayden Daniels is the truth. Jayden Daniels is him. Jayden Daniels has it. And now my Dallas Cowboys are going to have to deal with Jayden Daniels twice a year for who knows what, the next 15 years? Now, I reiterate, I still believe the Philadelphia Eagles are going to beat the Baltimore Ravens in the Super Bowl. And I do believe the Eagles would have beaten the Commanders Sunday if Frankie Louvu hadn't hit Jalen Hurts in the head after he was on the ground. Sent Jalen into concussion protocol with no flag. Explain that, please. And I also think if C.J. Gardner-Johnson hadn't gotten himself thrown out of that game for getting 2 unsportsmanlike penalties, and C.J., trust me on this, he's the heartbeat and the best playmaker on that best in the NFL Eagles defense. C.J. can be a hothead, over-emotional, But listen, everywhere he goes, winning happens. So once CJ was gone Sunday at Washington, Jayden Daniels happened again. Jayden threw for 258 yards, 5 touchdowns, including that late game winner. And Jayden Daniels ran 9 times for 81 yards. Cowboys had 31 total rush yards. And Jayden included in his 81 yards were 3 big 4th down conversions in which, at 6 feet 4 inches tall, he flashed speed and wiggle. I'm sorry, I didn't see when I watched him at LSU. I keep thinking, who is this guy? Jayden Daniels had a QBR against the best defense in football of 96, that scale of 0 to 100, and that vaulted him all the way up to 72 for the season, his rookie season as a starter, 72. So Josh Allen is first in QBR, followed by Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, and Jayden Daniels is 4th in QBR. That is extraordinary. I watched this kid, 5 or 6 times at LSU. I just didn't see this and this and this. I like Caleb Williams a lot. I watched him a whole lot at Oklahoma and USC, and I still believe in Caleb Williams. And by the way, in their loss to Detroit, he did throw for 334 yards. And I had no issue with him going 1 and Jayden 2. But there's something about Jayden Daniels. He's actually a better pro than college quarterback. That's rare. You just don't see this. Jayden, as a commander, as opposed to an LSU Tiger, he's just got a different aura around him. He's got this glow around him. Jayden plays so happy, yet with such intense focus and supreme confidence. Jayden constantly jokes with defenders around him. He was cutting up yesterday with several of the Eagles. He laughs, he smiles. And yet he's got that serene poise. For a young man so sure of himself, he's also so shockingly and convincingly humble. He comes across as an authentic good guy, God guy, true believer, priorities in the right order. Now, I do hear stories that I don't love about his mother, who runs all of his business interests. But from what I'm told, that's all her, not him. Man, my eyes are having a hard time sort of comprehending what I'm seeing, because he just looks faster than he did at LSU. He's joked that he could run a 4.25 40. He didn't run one at the combine, didn't participate. Some people say he ran 4.5 when he was at Arizona State, but I don't know. He's looking like 4.3 or 4.4 to me. So quick and so fast and so make you miss. He's 6'4". You can't move like that when you're that tall. Now, my only concern for Jayden is he just runs so much, and too recklessly. He did have those bruised ribs that sent him into that little sort of 3-game funk slump there at midseason. But he's now second to Lamar in quarterback rushing yards, and he's only second by 28 yards. He's carried it 128 times for 737 yards. That's 6 yards per rush. That'll work. And he scored 6 rushing touchdowns. That'll really work. And that arm, I didn't see that arm at LSU, because I'm talking about nuclear arm. I'm talking about being able to sling fastballs and then those effortless, deep rainbows. Where was all that at LSU? I didn't see that. And of course, as we're already seeing, the bigger the moment, the bigger he plays. This kid was definitely born with the clutch gene. We saw it late against Joe Burrow. We really saw it late against Caleb and the Bears with the Hail Jayden. Then late yesterday. My prediction is President Trump will soon be battling Jayden Daniels for headlines and star power in Washington. Jayden is going to be that big, that good, the ultimate commander-in-chief for the Commanders. I must admit this publicly. I now envy the arch rival of my Dallas Cowboys. Dallas, Washington goes back for decades. Feels like centuries. But now, our arch rival has him. Whew. Okay, I'm going to head this one off at the pass. Thank you very much. I'm going to head it off before it becomes a runaway thing, fueled by the billions of blind witnesses out there. The Lakers postgame show out here in LA on Sports Spectrum already gave this some wow momentum the other night after the second straight Lakers win at Sacramento. Wow, wow, wow. LeBron is only 2 back of Michael Jordan in career 30-point games. It's 560 to 562 for Jordan. Wow, 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 wow. Surely he'll catch and pass Jordan soon. Wow, 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 wow. I could almost hear the blind witnesses out there chant in creepy, culty unison, GOAT, GOAT, GOAT. No, phony GOAT. LeBron James has now played, are you ready for this, blind witnesses? LeBron James has now played 16,500 more minutes than Michael Jordan did. 16,500 and counting. If I divide those minutes by LeBron's career average of 38 minutes played per game, LeBron has played about 434 more games than Jordan played. 434 more games than Jordan played. And I don't think he's close to being done as he nears age 40 on December 30th. Happy early birthday, LeBron. What's this man going to play? This year and next year? This year and 2 more years? So obviously, he's going to set all sorts of longevity records because he's the most durable superstar we have ever seen. God bless him. No knee surgeries. I'm knocking on wood. No shoulder surgeries. No Achilles surgeries. No surgeries at all. So if you wind up playing, 450 more games than Jordan, yes, you're going to pass him in career 30-point games, if not every other longevity stat. Even though Michael Jordan won 10 scoring titles to LeBron's 1, 10-1. So I'm going to give you this. It is astonishing to me that LeBron James at age 39, almost 40, in year 22, has 5 30-point games this year before Christmas. Before Christmas, 5. That's impossibly great. LeBron is obviously playing at by far the highest level we have ever seen from a 39-year-old, almost 40-year-old, by far. He's averaging 23 points, 8 rebounds, and 9 assists, which would be respectable numbers for a 29-year-old LeBron. So if you want to call him the longevity GOAT, you can be my guest. But if you're saying to me, see, this is another reason he's better than Jordan, you should be ashamed of yourself. This is a pathetically desperate attempt to justify the laughably absurd notion that LeBron James is better than Michael Jordan. Period. End of story. End of thing. So here's my biggest revelation from watching Aaron Rodgers' Enigma on Netflix. An enigma is something mysterious and puzzling, difficult to understand. Yet it is painfully obvious to me exactly what happened to Aaron Rodgers' career. No enigma needed. He and his 2010 Packers came from nowhere with no expectations as the 6th seed, as a road wildcard team. And what? Wait a second. They won the Super Bowl? Yep, they did. And as Aaron says in the Netflix doc, that night, after winning the Super Bowl, it hit him that winning it all didn't really make him that happy. His reaction was, is this all there is? I think he was expecting Nirvana, Valhalla, Utopia, heaven on earth. And he got a trip back to Green Bay and a ring. That's it. He also woke up the next day and he realized that, oh no, now everybody's going to expect me to do this again and again and again. After all, he was only 27 as he won the Super Bowl. But this is all why Aaron Rodgers, as I said from the start, is the flip side of Tom Brady. Brady won his first Super Bowl, and he could not wait to win his second and his third and his fourth and on and on and on, because Brady was still paying an extreme price to be in extreme shape and extremely prepared after he won his 7th Super Bowl in the 10 he played in. Just think about this. It's been 15 years since Aaron Rodgers played in his one and only Super Bowl, because he was never, ever obsessed with playing in his first Super Bowl. To Aaron Rodgers, football is just a game that comes pretty easily to him because he could always throw a football. To Brady, football was life. It was his reason for being. Dominating the National Football League was Tom's heaven on earth. As you see in this doc, now Aaron Rodgers constantly experiments to find what life is really all about, what makes him happy. He still hasn't found what he's looking for, as U2 once sang. Aaron Rodgers goes to South America. I think he's been 2 or 3 times in the off seasons to expand his mind with ayahuasca experimentation, to be enlightened, to meet people who are enlightened. Not athletes, just people in general, people outside athletics. Lots of great footage in the doc about all that. I don't believe Aaron Rodgers has ever been obsessed with staying in the greatest shape or with studying football and achieving game plan enlightenment before his biggest playoff games. No, that 2010 team went on the road and barely won at Philly, won big at Atlanta, and then finally won the NFC Championship game in Chicago, in large part because my guy Jay Cutler from Vanderbilt University was lost to a sprained ACL before halftime. Then Troy Polamalu tried to play in the Super Bowl on a pulled hamstring, and he probably shouldn't have been out there. And my guy Ryan Clark was on his last legs for those Pittsburgh Steelers. And yep, it happened. Green Bay beat Pittsburgh, and Aaron Rodgers won Super Bowl MVP. That was his career crescendo. Since then, Aaron Rodgers, as I keep pointing out, is 7-9 in the postseason. And of those 7 wins, 6 of them had big luck factors. And those 9 losses include his last 3 pathetic playoff losses, twice as the 1 seed in Green Bay at home. And it doesn't include losing that playoff for the playoffs home game to Detroit, which was the very last game that he played for the Packers. I mean, Aaron Rodgers has been pathetic in the postseason of late, and nobody seems to notice, maybe except me. Tom Brady was aw shucks, gee whiz, off the field and in the announcer's booth now, but he was a flat-out, cold-blooded killer on it. On it, Aaron Rodgers became a finger-pointing, blame-deflecting choke artist. That's who the Jets traded for. That's who the Jets paid. That's who the Jets went out and got Devontae Adams for. Jets are 4-11. Aaron has plummeted to 23rd in QBR in the NFL. 23rd, just a tick above Kirk Cousins. I now wonder what the Jets decision makers thought when they watched Aaron Rodgers' Enigma on Netflix. Maybe I should disqualify myself on this one because as an Oklahoma fan, born and raised in Oklahoma City, big Sooner fan, I grew up hating Texas, as in University of, as in Longhorns. I even hate the Texas color, burnt orange. Just burns me up to look at burnt orange. But I was surprised when I saw that Texas is now favored to win the college football playoffs. Because I've thought all season, and maybe I'm not objective, but I've thought all season that Texas is overrated. I mean, my Vanderbilt Commodores had them and barely let them off the hook. Quinn Ewers will make mistakes, big mistakes in big moments. So it was. My eyes got big when I saw Texas opened as a 13.5-point favorite over Arizona, neutral field Peach Bowl. Man, I like the way Sam Leavitt operates at quarterback for Arizona State. And I love the way Cam Skattebo beasts as a runner and a receiver. Whew. Skattebo is highly capable of imposing his will on anybody, even Texas's defense, which is very good. So if I were a betting man, I was once upon a time, not now, but if I were a betting man and you gave me 13.5 and Arizona State against Texas, man. Allow me to talk briefly about my friend, my brother, my muse, Dwayne Michael Carter Jr. Allow me to go behind the scenes just for a moment about my relationship I have with Lil Wayne, which is mostly based on deep sports conversations. Wayne's obviously a genius at what he does as a creator, a lyricist. But you got to believe me on this. I'm a little bit of a sports snob. I know a lot about sports. I'm pretty smart on sports, but the smartest sports fan I have ever encountered, ever known, the deepest thinking sports fan I know is that man, Wayne. Wayne inspires me. Wayne, whether he knows this or not, he pushes me to let my mind go places it wouldn't without him. We feed off each other. It can be face-to-face, can be on the phone, and it's often via text. Feed. Sometimes I look at our text chains and I think, man, I could sell this as a book. Maybe someday I'll try that. I don't think Wayne would mind because it's nothing controversial. It's just straight genius. So, case in point that I want to emphasize, had Wayne on this show a week ago, late in the conversation. I asked him a question just off the top of my head, something we had maybe touched on in our conversations at his house occasionally on Saturdays when Ernestine and I go to visit him. But he did shock me with the answer here. We've touched on the figure, but not this answer. But I asked him, what one sports star in history, now or then, would you trade places with? That's easy for me. It's Michael Jordan all day and all night. But Wayne started to go Dion, which I would have appreciated, but then he shocked me. He went Babe Ruth. Now, Wayne is the rare, huge baseball fan as well as basketball and football. But then Wayne double shocked me, and I want to drive this home to you in case you missed it. He double shocked me by comparing Babe Ruth to Elvis Presley. Babe was Elvis. Yeah. Bingo. Beautiful. You've got skinny Babe and skinny Elvis early on when Babe was a great pitcher in Boston, led the league in ERA in Boston as a pitcher, and then he started to get fat in New York as Elvis got fat. And then after he retired really late in his career, Babe had all kinds of problems with alcohol, and he died early at 53, a la Elvis. It's just genius upon genius upon genius. Babe Ruth and Elvis. The point is, as Wayne knows, and most people don't get, certainly most younger people, in Babe's day, baseball was it. It was everything. There was very little pro football. It's like minor league football. There was no pro basketball. It was all about college football in those days. And what happened was that in his day, Babe was way bigger than anybody has ever been. Bigger than Jordan, bigger than Brady, bigger than Tiger, bigger than LeBron, because baseball was literally, as Wayne pointed out, our national pastime. It dominated. There was no college football star like Babe Ruth was to baseball. And I actually thought, but we were running out of time and Wayne had to run. But I thought he might get into what he and I have talked about off camera, the contention that Babe Ruth was actually biracial. A number of players of that era openly talked about Babe being biracial. In fact, he talked about occasionally being called racial slurs. He did date black women. He did hang out at the Cotton Club in Harlem. Babe Ruth first made it to the big leagues in Boston, of all cities with racist pasts, 33 years before Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier in baseball. Interesting. See, only Wayne can get me thinking like this. Man, I can't wait for our next convo. It can be face-to-face, might be this coming weekend, might be via text. I love you, man. Merry Christmas to you and to your family. I figure a lot of people who watch this show are young enough that they know Sammy Sosa only as that weird guy who played baseball, then went Michael Jackson and bleached his skin. Huh? Sammy did go a little weird after he went from very possibly being the most popular player in all of baseball in 1998, as well as the National League MVP in 1998, to being exiled and banned by the Cubs because of his alleged steroid use. The other day, poor Sammy Sosa, he finally apologized for his steroid use. I think he did. But apology was the condition he had to fulfill for Cubs chairman Tom Ricketts to let him back into the team's good graces and to invite him back to the Cubs convention, which is their winter fan fest in Chicago. I think he's going to go this year. But now allow me to apologize for being complicit in Sammy's downfall. You might say an accessory to his crime. Yeah, I was there in 1998 as a columnist for the Chicago Tribune. In fact, I wrote a book about that summer that saved baseball, the summer of love, the great home run chase that gripped America in a way nothing in baseball has over the last quarter century. Well, the truth is, I actually wrote the text for a book published by my company, the Chicago Tribune, which did own the Chicago Cubs. But this is more of a coffee table kind of book, heavy on pictures. It was called Sammy's Season. But I did get paid extra for that book. So I did profit from the steroid-fueled scam that gripped the country even more than Michael Jordan's last dance season with the Bulls, which actually was the June warm-up in Chicago for Sammy Sosa versus Mark McGwire. I must admit, as much as I loved covering Jordan, you know how much I did. I had even more fun for 2 months covering every Cubs game, home and road, as we went into September, as Sammy and Mark battled it out like two mighty gladiators, smiting baseballs into the night at a record rate. Roger Maris's record 61 homers left in the Coliseum dust at their feet. I was there in Houston that Friday night, late September, when Sammy again took my breath away, left my jaw dropped with a line shot home run that just kept rising and rising and finally rising over the Astrodome's left field wall like something NASA should have tracked. I thought it was going to hit the wall. Then I thought it was going to make a hole in the wall. Then I thought it was going to make a hole in the stadium and be launched. And with that home run, he and Mark McGwire were tied with 66 home runs. Impossible. Awe-inspiring, jaw-dropping. I'm not sure I've ever been more enthralled, more entertained, more encapsulated by a sports development than that one. Then that Saturday and Sunday, final 2 games of the regular season, McGwire left Sosa in the dust by launching 4 more homers to win that great home run chase, 70 homers to 66 homers. Now, was I aware at the time that 70 and 66 were possibly steroid-fueled? I was. I first saw Sammy Sosa when he was this skinny 165-pound 20-year-old in the Texas Rangers clubhouse. That was 1989. I covered the Rangers at that point as a columnist in Dallas. Then went to the White Sox and then to the Cubs. But as a Cub, Sammy hit 36 homers, 40 homers, and 36 homers in 95, 96, and 97. So he did have rare natural power. You have to. But by 1998, Sammy, he looked like he could play defensive tackle for the Bears. I don't know what he weighed, 250, 260. I know the result. He went from 36 homers to 66 homers, 97 to 98. So one night I did pull baseball commissioner Bud Selig aside in the press box in Chicago, and I asked Selig what he knew about steroid use and abuse in baseball. And he said, sure, he knows all about it, but that the players' union was so powerful that Selig and the owners could not drive home and mandate regular testing or regular punishment. But you want to know what the truth was? Baseball looked the other way because the great home run race, it sold. It sold lots of ads for TV. It sold lots of newspapers for my newspaper. Remember the Nike ad, 98? Chicks dig the long ball, did they? Everybody dug the long ball. Now, I did ask my sports editor about writing about steroid use, and he said he was open to it, and I believe he was, even though the Tribune did own the Cubs. Yet my sports editor warned me. He said, you're going to have airtight proof, as in I was going to have to witness Sosa getting shot up, or at least have a first-hand account of him getting injected with anabolic steroids. I knew no one in Sosa's inner circle. I don't think anybody in the media knew anyone in Sammy's inner circle. So, yeah, I shrugged, and I went along for a great ride. Much was made when the Cubs played at St. Louis. This was early September. Much was made of Sosa and McGwire being great friends who had even vacationed together, and it was all phony baloney. Sammy later told me he barely knew McGwire. Knew him only to say hello to him when Sammy was on first, which was the position Mark played. So the whole thing was a fairy tale scam. Then again, I'm sorry, I just could never work up a whole lot of righteous indignation over these cheaters obliterating baseball's sacred records. As Curt Schilling said at the time about steroids, and I quote, half the players are doing it and half are thinking about doing it, said Curt Schilling. Hey, Barry Bonds watched the great home run chase, and he basically said, okay, I'm late to the party, but here I come. Did he ever? I was there for Barry and his solo home run chase, chasing himself, actually. But now looking back, I must admit, I feel a little sorry for Sammy Sosa, this kid from the Dominican Republic who got swept up in the steroid craze and all of its fame and all of its fortune. He wasn't Bonds in ability, but he was at least in Barry's ballpark when it came to hitting talent, just in the ballpark. Steroids alone can't immediately transform you into an MVP. Sammy did have rare hand-eye coordination, rare natural power. Just getting stronger can't immediately produce numbers as they did in 1998 for Sammy. I mean, he hit 308 with a league-leading 158 runs batted in and 66 home runs. These are rare numbers. You have to have some talent already, rare talent, to get to those numbers, even with the help of strength, added strength. Yeah, Sammy could be a little prickly off camera. I had my battles with him off camera, but on camera, man, he had rare natural showmanship and charisma with this heart tap kisses that were part of his home run celebrations. It was fun to watch. That summer, I swear, he rivaled Jordan's popularity in Chicago. And he was much more lovable than McGwire, the white guy American. But McGwire was a naturally grumpy sourpuss who shrank from the spotlight. McGwire was Paul Bunyan, almost mythical giant of a man. Sammy was human. Sammy had a smile warmer than August and September. Sammy Sosa was the one who made baseball the talk of the sports world that summer in ways it hasn't been since. And then after those congressional hearings, Sosa became a pariah, and no doubt it shook him, maybe even came close to destroying him. Other PED figures were fairly quickly welcomed back into the good graces of their teams that they played for, McGwire and Bonds and Clemens and Pettit. But Sosa, man, he had to grovel. He had to crawl. He finally had to apologize. And now let me apologize for being part and parcel of that 1998 scam, that bogus fairy tale, that book I helped create, Sammy's Season. But man, did I ever have fun that year. Thank you, Sammy. for that. That's it for this episode. Thanks to Tyler Korn for producing, to Ernestine for overseeing, and to Hazel for approving. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy New Year, Cowboy fans.